The restaurant was almost silent, save for the soft clink of cutlery and murmurs from a few well-dressed patrons. I was sitting across from my son, Ethan, in my plain grey cardigan, feeling the familiar tightening in my chest. My hands rested on the table, and my knuckles ached slightly, not from the cold, but from the tension building like a storm trapped in a bottle. Brielle, my daughter-in-law, was wearing that self-satisfied smile I had come to dread. She leaned toward Ethan, and in one swift, deliberate motion, her hand struck his cheek. A sharp, cracking sound cut through the room. Ethan froze. His eyes widened, a mix of shock and hurt crossing his face. His lips trembled. He tried to say something, anything, but no sound came out. Before I could even gather my thoughts, Rhiannon, her mother, erupted in laughter and applause. "That's how it's done," she crowed, leaning forward as if she were officiating some grotesque ceremony. "He needs to learn his place." The room's silence became a cage around Ethan. I could feel all the stares, all the judgment, weighing down on him like chains. He slumped in his chair, shoulders hunched, lips quivering, eyes shimmering with tears he refused to shed loudly. The quiet despair was louder than any shout. I have never felt a rage like the one that erupted in me at that moment. It was not polite anger or fleeting irritation. It was a deep, roaring fire, the kind that awakens something ancient and primal in a mother's heart. Watching the man I had raised, the one who had always been kind, generous, and soft-hearted, reduced to a trembling shell by his own family, it was unbearable. Every small cruelty I had noticed over the past 3 years, the way Brielle dismissed his ideas, the subtle digs at his intelligence, the way Rhiannon laughed at him openly, all of it came flooding back. My chest tightened. I could barely breathe, and yet, I felt a crystal-clear certainty. Something had to be done. Even now, I can recall the exact moment Ethan's hand lifted to his face, attempting to shield himself, not just from the physical sting, but from the humiliation that cut deeper than any slap could. I could see his heart breaking in real time, and I knew, without question, that this would not stand. This wasn't the first time. Far from it. For months, Ethan had been navigating a world where his opinions were trivialized and his choices mocked. At family gatherings, at dinners, even in private conversations, Brielle had found a way to belittle him without overtly raising her voice. And Rhiannon? She was the fuel to the fire, encouraging every slight, reinforcing every put-down, and magnifying his insecurities until they became unbearable. I could see the pattern, and I could see the consequences. Ethan's laughter had faded, replaced with a polite, hollow chuckle whenever he was forced to engage. His eyes, once bright with curiosity and humor, now carried a dull, muted caution. It was as if he were waiting for the next strike, never sure when it would come, but always expecting it. And now, in this restaurant, with a public audience of strangers witnessing the act, the cruelty had reached its peak. Have you ever witnessed someone you love humiliated in a space meant for comfort and celebration? Have you ever felt that helpless tightening in your chest, the kind that screams at you to act, but you're trapped by circumstance, by fear, or by social norms? Now, consider this. That someone is your own child. The one you raised, protected, and nurtured. Someone who has always carried a gentle heart, a kindness that makes them vulnerable to people like Brielle and Rhiannon. Could you stand by and do nothing? I knew I could not. And that is where our story begins. If you wouldn't remain silent while this was happening to your family, subscribe now. Follow along, because what comes next will show how even the most arrogant people can be held accountable. And if you choose not to subscribe, tell me in the comments why you wouldn't. I want to know, do you really think injustice should go unchallenged? Ethan had always been the kind of man who made the world feel lighter simply by being in it. From the moment he could walk, he carried a sense of openness, a generous heart that gave freely without expectation of reward. As a child, he would rescue stray animals in the neighborhood, patiently teach younger cousins how to ride bikes, and offer words of encouragement to friends whose confidence wavered. That gentle kindness, the same quality that had earned him a devoted circle of friends and respect among colleagues, would later become the very thing that made him vulnerable. In college, he had been known for staying late to help peers study, for volunteering at local libraries, and for mentoring students who struggled with history. Even as a young man, there was an instinct in him to put others before himself, to prioritize understanding and patience over dominance or competition. Those traits that I had always admired made him a teacher, a guide, and a source of quiet strength. They also made him the target of people who enjoyed control and submission, people who thrived on bending others to their will. When Brielle entered his life, she arrived not as a companion, but as a force that slowly, almost imperceptibly, began to rewrite the rules of his world. At first, the changes were subtle. A missed call from his mother would elicit a sigh from Brielle, a pointed remark about how he couldn't manage his priorities properly. Dinner conversations were hijacked by her need to dominate the topic, transforming discussions about vacations or family gatherings into exercises in her judgment and criticism. His opinions, once confidently voiced, were met with gentle derision, as if any independent thought he had required her sanction to exist. Rhiannon, her mother, acted as both enabler and amplifier. She did not just support Brielle. She cheered her on, validated every slight, and added her own brand of cruelty. A meal prepared by Ethan would be met with a pointed remark about how it lacked sophistication. A new shirt or jacket would be critiqued not for taste, but for its failure to signal power, wealth, or influence. I watched from a distance as my son's bright spirit dimmed under the constant weight of judgment, manipulation, and the relentless insistence that his worth was measured by someone else's standards. It was never overt, never a shouting match or physical aggression, though later, as we would see, the cruelty could take those forms. No, it was 1,000 tiny cuts. A joke disguised as advice, a sigh at a choice, a congratulation turned backhanded. Brielle had a way of making him feel that anything he did for himself, for pleasure, or for pride was somehow inappropriate, selfish, or beneath her standards. Rhiannon, ever the accomplice, made sure that each of these slights resonated with a louder echo. My son began to shrink, not in stature, but in confidence, in voice, in the certainty of his own worth. I remember vividly the first family dinner where the erosion became undeniable. Ethan had taken great care to cook a roast he knew we all loved, a recipe that had been a tradition in our family for generations. As he set it down, proudly anticipating our delight, Brielle's eyes narrowed. "Are you sure this isn't too old-fashioned?" she asked, with the slightest curl of her lip. "It's charming, I suppose, but we should have something that fits the way people see us now." Before Ethan could respond, Rhiannon chimed in, voice sharp and gleeful. "Honestly, Sylvia, he means well, but it's obvious he needs guidance in everything." That was the moment I realized the depth of control exerted over him. Not only was his wife undermining him, but her mother was constructing a stage where humiliation was performance art. The entire event, meant to celebrate family and connection, had transformed into a demonstration of their dominance. Over time, these incidents grew more frequent. A minor misstep at work became the topic of extended critique at dinner. Ethan's achievements, no matter how significant, were reframed as insufficient or misguided. When he shared news about a successful classroom project, Brielle would interject with concern that it was not the kind of impact that really matters, or that it didn't align with our lifestyle goals. Rhiannon would nod knowingly, reinforcing the notion that my son's success required their validation. Even his personal passions suffered. The worn leather armchair in his living room, which he loved for reading and reflection, was replaced without his consent. His collection of vintage vinyl records, which had been a source of joy since his youth, was banished to the garage and labeled as clutter, with a sense of authority that left no room for negotiation. The environment he once called home became an extension of their will, a constant reminder that his desires, tastes, and achievements were secondary to their judgment. Yet despite the erosion, Ethan remained tender, cautious, and considerate. He did not lash out. He did not retaliate. He simply withdrew, attempting to navigate the minefield of their expectations while maintaining the peace. It was heartbreaking to witness. Every interaction, every visit, every conversation required him to anticipate and preempt disapproval. His laughter became a quiet, controlled thing, his smiles hesitant, and his voice often barely audible when he attempted to assert himself. Small family anecdotes illustrate the slow collapse of his autonomy. I remember a phone call last summer when I invited him to my home for his favorite dinner. Just a simple meal that used to bring him joy. He hesitated for an impossibly long time before answering. When he finally spoke, it was barely a whisper. "Mom, I can't. Brielle wants me to focus on my diet. She says it's important for her cousin's wedding." That quiet resignation, that self-effacing compliance, cut deeper than any insult or public embarrassment. Watching him, I felt the gnawing frustration that all parents dread, the helplessness of seeing someone you love diminished by manipulation, and the knowledge that no amount of gentle advice would pierce the walls built around him. Yet, within that frustration, a spark began to grow. It was not just protectiveness. It was a realization that patience alone would no longer suffice. Someone had to act. Someone had to stand as the barrier between Ethan and the relentless erosion of his dignity. And so, as I recount these early chapters of our story, I invite you to reflect. Have you ever felt powerless while someone controlled your loved one? Have you watched quietly as manipulation eroded their confidence, hoping that one day the scales would tip? This is the world in which Ethan lived, a world of quiet humiliation, subtle domination, and enforced submission. But it is also the world in which the storm of retribution was quietly, patiently gathering. Before the next chapter unfolds, let me remind you. If you want to witness the justice that is about to take shape, subscribe and follow along. Stay with us as the story moves from quiet suffering to a confrontation that will leave no doubt about who holds the power. The day Ethan received his textbook acceptance should have been one of the proudest moments of his life. He had spent years working toward it. Quiet nights grading essays, weekends helping his students complete college applications, mornings spent preparing lessons with a level of dedication most people never see. When that letter arrived, he held it with trembling hands, the corners of his mouth lifting in a smile I had not seen in months. It wasn't just good news. It was proof that he still had purpose, talent, and direction. He came to the restaurant glowing, trying his best to keep his happiness under control, almost as if he feared someone would snatch it away. I watched him walk through the doorway with a sense of renewed pride, his shoulders finally relaxed, his eyes bright. The place was full that evening, voices layered over soft music, the scent of grilled chicken and buttered rolls drifting through the air. Warm lights reflected off polished tables, and conversations overlapped like waves lapping at a shore. But even with all that movement and noise, I saw the exact second Brielle noticed the envelope in his hand. Her expression tightened, not in curiosity, but in annoyance, as if his joy was a disruption she needed to eliminate. She leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and waited for him to speak with that familiar air of superiority that always made my stomach tighten. Ethan slid into his seat, barely containing his excitement. "I got it," he whispered first, then cleared his throat. "Mom, I got accepted. My textbook is going to be published." I reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Before I could say more, Brielle snatched the envelope out of his grip, her nails clicking sharply against the paper. She scanned the letter with a smirk tugging at her lips. "A textbook," she said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "That's what you're celebrating? Ethan, nobody cares about that. It's academic stuff. It's not impressive." Rhiannon snorted, picking up her wine glass as if to toast to her own cruelty. "This again? Honestly, Ethan, I thought by now you'd aim higher. Publishing something only a handful of people read is hardly worth bragging about." His smile collapsed. In that instant, I watched something flicker behind his eyes, hope turning into embarrassment, pride folding into self-doubt. He reached for the letter again, hands shaking slightly, but Brielle slid it just out of reach, holding it up like a dull trophy. Her tone shifted from condescending to outright mocking. "I mean, really, when will you finally focus on doing something valuable? Something that reflects well on us?" Every word dropped like a stone into the silence that was forming. The clatter of cutlery around us seemed to fade as my anger rose. The restaurant's warm atmosphere no longer felt comforting. The buzz of voices dimmed, the air thickened, and the tension around our table became impossible to ignore. Ethan whispered, "I just wanted to share it with you." "You always want praise for the smallest things," Rhiannon said with a dismissive wave. "It's childish." I saw him shrink again, his shoulders curving inward, his chest tightening as if he was trying to make himself as small as possible. He stared at the table, his fingers tapping gently against the wood, a nervous habit he developed when he was a boy and felt cornered. My jaw clenched so tightly I felt a pulse beating in my ears. This wasn't harmless belittling anymore. This was cruelty on display. This was humiliation served in front of strangers. And what made it worse was the confidence with which they delivered it. The audacity, the near celebratory tone they used as they tore him down. I took a slow breath, my hand wrapping around my water glass to steady myself. The coolness of it shocked my skin, anchoring me in a moment where fury threatened to consume every ounce of restraint I had left. For months I had watched Ethan fade. But right there, in that crowded restaurant, something inside me hardened. They weren't just undermining him. They were attacking the very core of who he was, robbing him of every moment that should have strengthened his confidence. I could feel the shift in me, moving from concerned mother to something far more determined. It wasn't rage without direction. It was purpose, focus, a calm decision rising within me that this would be the final time they treated my son this way without consequence. Ethan finally looked up, eyes glistening. "I thought you'd be proud," he said quietly. Brielle rolled her eyes. "Proud? Ethan, stop embarrassing yourself." That was it. That was the moment everything snapped into place inside me. My heart hammered, my breath sharpened, and the noise of the restaurant returned like a rushing wave, but it no longer distracted me. It fueled me. Every chuckle from another table, every clink of a glass, every soft footstep made me more certain that their cruelty needed to be confronted, not with a shouting match, but with a plan that would leave no room for escape. You see, cruelty like this doesn't stop on its own. People like Brielle and Rhiannon don't change because someone asks politely. They stop only when they're forced to face the consequences of their own arrogance. And as I sat there watching my son's joy crumble, I knew exactly what I was going to become. His shield, his reckoning, and the one person they never expected to stand against them. Now let me ask you something, and I want you to answer this honestly. If this were your child being torn down in public, wouldn't you want to act? Wouldn't you want someone to step forward and restore their dignity? If your answer is yes, then subscribe now so you don't miss how justice takes shape. And if you won't, tell me in the comments why you'd stay silent. I want to hear it. As Brielle finalized her mockery with one last cutting remark, I sat perfectly still, my expression calm. But inside me, the course had been set. The moment she placed that letter back on the table with a smug grin, I knew she had no idea what she had awakened. She and her mother were about to learn that a quiet mother can become a force when her child is attacked. And soon, very soon, everyone in that restaurant, and beyond, would understand just how wrong they were to think my silence meant defeat. How will I respond to this humiliation? You'll see. Stay with me. This is only the beginning. I kept my tone light when I called Brielle that morning, even though every part of me felt like a pot ready to boil over. She picked up with that sharp, careless voice she always used when she thought she held the upper hand. I told her we should all go out for a celebratory dinner. Ethan's acceptance deserved something special, after all. I could practically hear her smirk through the phone. She agreed instantly, clearly imagining a night where she and her mother would sit across from us and flaunt their sense of superiority like jewelry they never earned. That was fine. I wanted them comfortable. I wanted them convinced nothing was out of the ordinary. The more at ease they were, the cleaner the moment would be when everything shifted. Before leaving the house, I stood in front of the mirror for a long moment. I didn't bother with flashy clothes or dramatic makeup. A simple dress, soft shoes, and my hair pinned back neatly. I looked exactly like a mother who wanted a quiet evening out. Meanwhile, I knew the two of them would arrive draped in outfits chosen for attention. Tight dresses, loud accessories, and makeup applied with the goal of taking up as much visual space as possible. That contrast mattered. People notice those differences even when they don't comment. And tonight, that silent awareness would work in my favor. In the kitchen, I packed my bag with the items I needed. Nothing dramatic, nothing illegal, nothing that would draw suspicion. Just documents, a small envelope, and a folded piece of paper that held the spark that would ignite everything. As I closed the bag, I felt a strange steadiness wash over me. It wasn't rage anymore. It wasn't grief. It was clarity. For the first time in months, I wasn't reacting, I was leading. On the drive to the restaurant, I kept my hands relaxed on the steering wheel and let my mind move through the plan step by step. Every detail had been chosen carefully. The time of day, the type of restaurant, the seating style, the number of servers working the floor. The place was always busy enough for people to witness everything, but not chaotic enough for important moments to be missed. I even chose a booth near the center, where conversations could be overheard easily. I knew exactly what would unfold, and yet I kept my face calm, almost gentle. That calmness was part of the setup. People tend to underestimate calm women, especially ones who look like they're just trying to keep their families together. Let them underestimate me. It serves the story better. When I walked into the restaurant, I could already sense the electricity in the room. Conversations humming, utensils clinking lightly, servers weaving between tables. Every sound fit into the scene I needed. The lighting was warm, inviting, and just bright enough for facial expressions to be obvious without being harsh. The kind of place where people notice even quick reactions. Perfect. Then the front doors opened again, and Brielle and her mother strutted in. Their heels clicked like they wanted the entire room to acknowledge their arrival. Their clothes were bold, colors chosen for attention, and their smiles had that familiar sharpness. Too bright, too forced, too proud of themselves. They scanned the room the way people do when they think they're above everyone else. It didn't bother me. In fact, it helped. Their need for attention was predictable, and predictability made planning easier. As they approached the table, I rose politely, greeting them with a soft smile. Brielle barely met my eyes, and her mother gave me the sort of nod reserved for people she didn't consider equals. Good. Let them keep believing that. Meanwhile, Ethan sat beside me, noticeably tense but trying to appear composed. I rested my hand over his for a brief moment, calming him, reminding him he wasn't alone, signaling that he didn't need to react to their coldness. Once we all sat, the server brought water and menus. I watched Brielle and her mother flip through the pages with dismissive flicks, as though everything offered was beneath them. That minor behavior told the entire story of how they saw the world. But I didn't react. Instead, I leaned back slightly and asked the viewers directly in my own thoughts. If you were sitting across from two people who treated your child this way, what would your next move be? Would you let them believe they were in charge? Or would you let them walk right into the moment they never saw coming? I glanced at my bag on the seat beside me. The envelope inside felt almost warm against the fabric, as though it held its own heartbeat. That envelope represented every insult they had thrown at my son. Every day he came home quieter than he had left. Every time he tried to justify why he stayed. That envelope wasn't revenge by itself, but it was the perfect starting point. As the server returned to take our orders, I maintained a pleasant expression, the kind you'd expect from someone trying to keep the peace. But inside, I was already steps ahead. I knew that the moment they least expected anything would be the moment when their certainty cracked. Before we continue, tell me, what do you think the first reveal will be? What small, calculated move would you expect a mother like me to make? The moment we were seated, I could feel the subtle electricity of anticipation in the air. Brielle immediately began, her voice smooth and sharp as she corrected the pronunciation of the first wine on the menu. Rhiannon, always eager to take center stage, chimed in with exaggerated stories of trips, investments, and her opinions on Ethan's wardrobe choices. Every sentence was a reminder that they believed themselves untouchable, that my son's feelings were inconsequential. Ethan shifted uneasily beside me, his fingers brushing against the tablecloth as if seeking an anchor. I knew his thoughts even before he spoke, the careful calculation to avoid conflict, the constant weighing of consequences. He wanted to smile, to share, to celebrate, but the air around him was thick with judgment and scorn. I waited. Patience was a weapon I had honed over months. I sipped my water slowly, appearing calm and almost fragile. They noticed nothing, believing my subdued presence meant submission. That would soon change. Then I reached into my bag and withdrew the envelope. Its presence was innocuous, yet it held the weight of months of frustration, cruelty, and unspoken truth. I placed it gently in front of Ethan. His eyes widened slightly, a glimmer of hope igniting. He hesitated, looking to me, as if silently asking permission. I nodded almost imperceptibly. He opened it, and the textbook cover was revealed. The embossed title caught the dim light of the restaurant, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, his face lifted with pride. He held it delicately, as though the paper itself might shatter under the pressure of his own excitement. "It's finally here," he whispered, voice trembling, yet stronger than I had heard in months. Brielle's reaction was immediate. She snatched the book from him with one hand, twisting it so the title was hidden from view, and her voice sharpened. "Are you serious, Sylvia? You bring this here? In public?" Her tone was calculated, meant to humiliate, not just Ethan, but anyone who dared notice him celebrating. Rhiannon, not one to miss an opportunity to belittle, laughed sharply. He's embarrassing himself again. Honestly, this is what he's proud of. She leaned back, her posture triumphant, fully expecting the humiliation to be complete. Ethan's fingers twitched, a subtle but unmistakable act of defiance. "It's important to me," he said softly, reclaiming a sliver of agency in his voice. And that's when it happened. Brielle's hand lashed out with sudden, terrifying force. The sound of the slap cut through the low hum of the restaurant like a gunshot. I saw the impact in slow motion, the sharp angle of her wrist, the flush that spread across Ethan's cheek, the way his eyes watered as the sting registered. Every patron turned toward the table, the room vibrating with shocked silence. Rhiannon's triumphant cheer followed instantly. "That's how it's done," she barked, leaning forward, her expression alight with vindication. "He needs to learn his place." Her voice cracked through the air, punctuating the moment like a bell tolling in a graveyard. Ethan's body slumped slightly, and his hand moved instinctively to his cheek. Tears brimmed in his eyes, but he did not speak. My son, normally so bright and confident, looked small, broken, but not beyond repair. I stood. Slowly, the scrape of my chair echoed through the restaurant, a sharp, precise sound that drew every eye. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with the magnitude of the fury that had been accumulating for months. My voice, when it emerged, was quiet but carrying the force of an avalanche. "Enough," I said. Just one word, and the air shifted. Patrons leaned in instinctively, sensing a confrontation that demanded attention. Brielle froze mid-sentence. Rhiannon's smile faltered. I took a deliberate step toward the table. "This stops now. Right here. Right in front of everyone." They looked at me as though I was suddenly a different person entirely. Perhaps I was. My voice, calm yet edged with unyielding authority, cut through their hubris. "You think humiliating my son is acceptable behavior? You think cheering on his pain is entertainment?" Every word measured, every syllable designed to leave no room for their arrogance. The restaurant, usually a background of polite conversation, had become a stage. Servers paused mid-step. Diners' attention focused naturally, drawn to the injustice unfolding. The power had shifted in an instant. They were no longer the arbiters of Ethan's humiliation. I was. Brielle stammered, unable to regain her composure. Rhiannon's face had lost its triumphant glow. My hand hovered lightly near the envelope, the subtle reminder of the evidence, the book that had sparked the chain reaction. I leaned in slightly, quiet enough that my words were like ice tracing along their nerves. "Do you see him? Do you see the effect your actions have on the people you claim to love? And you cheer it on?" For a moment, no one spoke. Then, like a crack in a dam, Rhiannon's voice faltered. Patrons shifted in their seats, some glancing around, others leaning forward, curiosity and unease rippling through the room. Every glance was a silent witness, each one a quiet indictment of their arrogance. I paused. "Let them feel it fully," The weight of public scrutiny, the exposure of their cruelty, the realization that control is never absolute. "This is not a game," I continued, my voice steady, resolute. "And tonight, you will learn that some lessons cannot be ignored." Even as I spoke, my mind calculated the next moves. Every shift in their posture, every flicker of doubt, added to the tension that had built to a fever pitch. The moment had been set for maximum impact. The injustice, once unseen, was now laid bare for everyone present. And here's the thing, the story isn't over yet. There's more to come, and I want you to witness every moment of it. If you think standing by while someone you love is treated this way is unacceptable, subscribe now. And if you won't, leave a comment explaining why you would allow someone to be humiliated in your presence. Because the payoff is coming, and they had no idea what was about to unfold. The restaurant was alive with quiet murmurs. Patrons who had been innocently enjoying their meals now exchanged knowing glances. Eyes darted toward the table where the confrontation had erupted moments ago. Rhiannon and Brielle, who had walked in with an air of dominance, now felt the weight of attention pressing down on them. They fidgeted, adjusting posture and hair as if the restaurant itself was judging their every move. I observed them calmly, letting the moment stretch. Every glance of disapproval, every subtle smirk or whispered conversation from those around us, became a nail in the coffin of their arrogance. The two women had built an entire social persona on control and perception, and that persona was unraveling in real time. I could almost hear the collective social eye locking down on them, witnessing the gap between the image they projected and the reality of their cruelty. The subtle interventions began to take effect. A waiter, previously polite and neutral, offered Ethan an extra glass of water with an understanding smile. Another patron, pretending to check their phone, exchanged a look with the server, a shared acknowledgement of the injustice they had witnessed. These small, almost imperceptible acts amplified the embarrassment for Brielle and Rhiannon. Every minor ripple in the restaurant echoed the collapse of their carefully constructed world. Ethan, on the other hand, began to lift his head. The tension in his shoulders eased slightly as he realized the silent witnesses around him had taken notice. There was no shame in being proud of one's achievements, and tonight the world, or at least this corner of it, agreed. He gently placed the textbook in front of him again, running his fingers over the embossed letters. The pride in his eyes returned slowly but unmistakably, like sunlight breaking through a stormy sky. Brielle's hands fumbled with her napkin, twisting it nervously. Rhiannon attempted to maintain her composure, her voice a pitch higher than usual, trying to reclaim dominance. "It's just a book, Sylvia. You're overreacting." But the murmurs around the restaurant made her words hollow. Patrons were whispering quietly, casting small, pointed glances. Even the manager, stopping by the table under the guise of checking if everything was satisfactory, gave a brief, subtle nod toward me, a silent validation that the women's behavior was unacceptable. I leaned in slightly, speaking softly to Ethan so only he could hear. "See? They thought they could control this room, this moment, but they underestimated you and underestimated me." His lips curved into a small, private smile. A spark of his old confidence returned, not in arrogance, but in quiet assurance. For the first time in months, he wasn't trying to survive her criticism. He was simply being himself. Meanwhile, Brielle and Rhiannon's attempts to regain control grew increasingly desperate. Brielle's smile, once sharp and confident, became strained. Every word she tried to say sounded hollow, every laugh forced. Rhiannon's habitual loud boasting fell flat, echoing in the room without impact. It was as if the restaurant itself had become a mirror, reflecting back the ugliness of their arrogance for all to see. I allowed myself a small nod toward the surrounding diners, letting them understand that justice had quietly taken place. Whispers grew, glances sharpened, and the two women's world constricted into an uncomfortable bubble of exposure. They had built their lives around dominance, manipulation, and the silencing of others, but tonight, those foundations had no bearing. Their control was gone, replaced by an unmistakable social verdict. Ethan, gradually, began to speak. Not loudly, not arrogantly, but with a steady voice that carried weight. "It's okay. "I'm fine." And in those two simple words, a transformation began. The man who had been small, silent, and crushed was returning, not just in presence, but in spirit. The book, the public confrontation, and the quiet support of witnesses had given him a foothold to reclaim himself. For the audience watching, this moment is satisfying not just because of the humiliation of the antagonists, but because the payoff feels earned. Every sneer, every insult they had thrown, every subtle act of control, had led to this collapse. The lesson is clear: cruelty unchecked can only hold power for so long, and when it meets calculated resistance, it becomes exposed for all to witness. I glanced at the women one last time. Rhiannon's face was tight with frustration. Brielle's jaw was clenched, her eyes darting as if searching for a way to re-establish dominance that no longer existed. And Ethan? He laughed quietly, a sound that was both relieved and victorious, the release of months of tension crystallizing in a single moment. As viewers, we've all encountered people like Brielle and Rhiannon, those who dominate, belittle, and manipulate others around them. But few ever see justice land with the subtle, satisfying clarity of a well-orchestrated reversal. That's why I want you to stay connected, to witness how someone who thought they were untouchable can be made to face the consequences of their actions. If you've ever felt powerless while watching someone you care about be manipulated or humiliated, subscribe now. And if you feel you wouldn't act, leave a comment explaining why. Let this story remind us all that standing up, calculated and deliberate, can reclaim dignity, restore pride, and bring balance where it was lost. The restaurant buzz continued around us, yet the moment at our table held a quiet gravity. For Ethan, for me, and for every silent observer who had felt the injustice, the message was unmistakable. Manipulation and cruelty have limits. Pride built on the suffering of others is fragile, and sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one you never want to underestimate. The restaurant had returned to its usual rhythm, the quiet chatter of patrons blending with the clink of silverware. Yet at our table, the air carried a subtle, triumphant weight. Ethan, for the first time in what felt like months, sat tall. His shoulders were relaxed, his hands no longer trembling as they once had. The shadows of self-doubt and manipulation that Brielle and Rhiannon had imposed were beginning to lift, replaced by a quiet confidence that radiated from him. I reached across the table and touched his hand lightly. "You did well, Ethan," I said softly. There was no need for grand gestures or loud proclamations. The bond between mother and son, strained by months of witnessing his humiliation, was now solidified in a shared victory. He smiled, a genuine curve of relief and pride, and I felt the warmth of connection we had both longed to reclaim. Brielle and Rhiannon, meanwhile, were reduced to careful movements and whispered corrections, their arrogance tempered by the scrutiny of the diners and the realization that control was no longer theirs to wield. Every glance they cast around the room seemed to seek approval or validation, but the room, once their stage, now reflected their loss of dominance. They had been publicly marked, not through vengeance that was cruel or petty, but through the quiet exposure of their own hubris. As I watched, I thought about the months leading up to this moment, the slow erosion of Ethan's confidence, the subtle and overt manipulations, the whispered jabs disguised as concern. Every act of control they had exerted now served as a counterpoint to the clarity of justice we had created. And I understood something essential. There are moments in life when patience, strategy, and deliberate action achieve far more than immediate confrontation ever could. Ethan looked at me, eyes bright with renewed determination. "Mom," he said, voice steady, "I feel like I can finally breathe again." The words were simple, but their weight was immense. He had reclaimed himself, and in doing so, reminded me of the depth of love that can fuel protective instincts. A mother's role is not only to nurture, but to defend, to establish boundaries that safeguard those we cherish from harm, even when the harm is hidden behind smiles or polite words. I allowed myself a quiet, private smile. The satisfaction of seeing justice served was profound, but it was not a satisfaction born of cruelty. It was the contentment that comes from restoring balance, from seeing right overcome wrongdoing, from witnessing someone you love stand tall once more. We all know a Brielle or Rhiannon in our lives, those who attempt to dominate, to belittle, to control the narrative around us or our loved ones. But tonight, Ethan's regained confidence and the humility imposed on his antagonists serve as a reminder that respect is earned, not demanded. That control through fear or manipulation is fragile, and even the most composed aggressors can be shown the limits of their influence. As the evening drew to a close, I reflected on the lessons this experience had imparted. Protecting those we love requires vigilance, strategy, and courage. Standing up for someone is not merely about reacting in the moment. It is about planning, timing, and understanding the dynamics at play. And sometimes, the quietest actions have the most profound impact. I glanced at Ethan, at the book that had ignited both pride and confrontation, and whispered to myself, "They will never forget me. And my son will never be treated that way again." The words carried a weight that was both warning and closure. It was a promise. As the last remnants of tension faded from that evening, I leaned back in my chair, letting the relief settle over both Ethan and me. But stories like this never truly end. They leave ripples, lessons, and, sometimes, questions that beg to be answered. And for those of you watching closely, there's always another story waiting just around the corner. You see, life has a way of revealing hidden betrayals, even when we think the worst has passed. In fact, my next story is one that will leave you questioning the very people you trust. It involves a son-in-law, a carefully laid plan, and a nursing home, all while I was unconscious, unable to defend myself. It's a tale of greed, deception, and the lengths some people will go to manipulate situations for their benefit. The sheer audacity of it will leave you stunned, but the resolution reminds us all of the power of foresight, courage, and standing up for what's right. Before we get to that next story, take a moment to reflect on tonight's events. We saw a gentle man broken by those closest to him, only to be lifted and restored by the unwavering love and calculated action of a mother who refused to stand by. The moral is clear. Protecting those we care for requires courage, planning, and the wisdom to know when patience has run its course. It's about recognizing manipulation, acting decisively, and ensuring that no one's dignity is trampled, not even in public. And now, I want to hear from you. Who in your life has tested your patience, or perhaps tried to diminish someone you care about? How would you have acted if faced with Brielle and Rhiannon's arrogance? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and let's start a conversation about standing up for the people we love. Your perspective could inspire someone else to reclaim their own sense of justice. If you don't want to miss the next story, the one about my son-in-law's audacious plan while I was in a coma, subscribe now. Don't wait until it's too late. These stories hold lessons that could protect you and those you care about. And if you choose not to subscribe, I want to know why. Comment below and tell me what's holding you back. Your voice matters, and it's part of the community we're building here. One story, one lesson, one act of courage at a time. Next time, we'll explore betrayal in a setting you wouldn't expect, the kind that preys on trust, and the revenge that restores balance in ways that leave lasting impressions. Make your predictions. How will I uncover the truth? How will justice be served? Leave your guesses below and see if your intuition aligns with the outcome. Remember, this is more than entertainment. It's about witnessing how courage, strategy, and love intersect to right wrongs and protect those who cannot always protect themselves. So stay tuned, engage with your thoughts, and join us as we continue to explore stories that prove one thing: injustice can be challenged, and lessons can be learned. Until then, hold tight, stay aware, and never underestimate the power of standing up for what's right. Because in the world of revenge echoes, every slight, every insult, and every act of manipulation can meet its match. And the next story might just be the one you never saw coming.